I'm really excited about this. Throughout my career working with and for and within trust companies, I've always been abundantly aware of the demands placed upon trustees. That might be for regulation, it might be in order to make sure that we're meeting the requirements of the trust, and then you've got beneficiaries who want to take benefit from the trust and maybe leaning on the trustees in order to get the maximum that they can out of the trust. And so through wealth planning, I can see how we can bring additional analysis and support the trustees in their role and making sure that we have success. Yes and no. So I say no, it's not new because we've been doing this for our private clients now for years and years, very successfully, I would add. And when looking at this, what we realised is the application for trusts and long-term trust structuring, having cash flow forecasting going out long time into the future is incredibly valuable. And so therefore, we've evolved the process now from just our private clients to also working with trusts, trustees and the ultimate beneficiaries. So first off, I would say this, I genuinely believe it gives you a competitive advantage because you have a unique selling point, because at the moment this is not widely adopted within the sector. I was chatting to a client last week and he said, why isn't everyone doing this? So clearly it does have an application. So in addition to that, there's going to be robust governance around what you're doing. And I suppose that really plays out that you will have a record or an audit trail. If anyone was to ever question why a decision was made in the future, you'd be able to point back and say, look, we considered everything against the wealth plan, the returns from the markets, the distribution requirements, and everything looked to make sense. So how can the plan help prevent or help us know that we're not going to run out of money? So we start by getting all the relevant background information. And then from that, we can plot a timeline, including the distributions in and distributions out into the future. With that background information, we can actually calculate the long-term required return from the investment part in order to make sure that the structure remains sustainable. So that cash flow forecasting is really, really important and relevant. And that, accompanied with knowing what the investment return is, can give us a high level of confidence that the funds are not going to run out, or identify now that perhaps they will. So when you're a settler, you're starting out and you will have some overall objectives in the letter of wishes, and you'll want to make sure that, for example, it might be support of education, it could be support of living expenses, possibly the purchase of a property. And you could think there's a lot of money available there at the outset. But actually what this can do is then calculate what those requirements are out into the future. And so we can have a high level of confidence at the outset that those sums are going to be successful for the term of the trust. I think with the beneficiaries, and I've seen this time and time again, they may well need or want to do something. So that might be, for example, to set up a new business, to buy a new property, or to take advantage of their situation. And they might think there's a lot of money there, so I can ask for a lot. And the wealth plan can calculate that and say, well, actually, if you take that out now, you're going to run out. there could be different classes of beneficiaries as well. So if you use all the money now, then someone else may suffer in the future as well. So that's a big problem for the trustees. And so the beneficiaries having this information, they're going to be in a much stronger position to decide what and how to do. We were looking at a structure with a client, and it had those requirements for the support of private education. There were living costs and living expenses for those in education as well. It's not only the cost of the going to the college or school, but there's the rest of the time when they're not actually in college or school. They need to be accommodated and survive, so sustenance maybe, and then potentially buying assets in the future like properties. And there's a substantial sum available at the start. You would have thought that that would be able to cover everything, but actually, when we plotted it out, it wasn't going to be able to achieve everything. The inflation part was a massive part of this consideration for this, because if you think inflation running, say it was 2 or 2.5%, you don't think that's very much, but when you compound that forward as you do for very long-term structures, it has a very significant impact on the the overall value and the purchasing power. So that led us to this situation where we had to have a very healthy discussion. And that came down to two things, really. It was either, one, is there any more assets available to settle into the fund now or in the future? They could be selling another property, or there could be a dividend or a sale of a company, for example. So it's not impossible. Or otherwise, you have to reduce the expenditure, the distributions. And either way, the outcome would be the same. You could come to a good plan to make sure that the structure was going to be successful into the future. Well, firstly, there's the competitive advantage and the unique selling point that we touched on. Secondly, be around the robust corporate governance. And thirdly, and you're going to like this, because this is part of our service, there is no additional cost to you.